More people are lost to wild animals in Africa than on any other continent, and almost none of it comes from the animal you're picturing. The lion isn't the problem here, neither is the leopard. The real danger is usually slower, smaller, or already standing close enough to touch. One of them weighs 3 tons and has never eaten meat in its life. Another one you can drink, invisible, in a glass of clear water, and carry inside your own leg for a year before it decides to come out. The unsettling thing about this continent was never the teeth. It's how calm most of these animals look, right up until the second they aren't. Before the first one, tell me what time it is where you are right now and what country you're watching from. Put it in the comments. The hippopotamus. The animal connected to more lives lost across Africa than every big cat, every shark, and most of the snakes on the continent put together, has no claws. It has no fangs that drip anything. It spends up to 16 hours a day doing exactly one thing, eating grass. That's the hippopotamus. Hippopotamus amphibius. Up to 3,000 kilograms of muscle wrapped in a body so round and so sleepy looking that we draw it with pink cheeks and put it in children's books. People see one half sunk in a river, just the eyes and ears and nostrils breaking the surface, all lined up on top of the skull so the rest of it stays hidden, and the brain quietly files it under big, harmless, kind of funny. That one small filing error is one of the most common ways a peaceful afternoon on an African river turns into something else entirely. Here's the part that doesn't add up. When a hippo comes at a boat, it isn't protecting a calf. It isn't hungry. Its stomach is built for vegetation and would have no idea what to do with a person. It comes because a boat drifted into a stretch of water it has decided is its own, and that is the whole reason. There's no bluff and no warning. It rises from the bottom without a sound, lifts the boat from underneath, and turns it over. And now there are people in the water sharing a very small space with the very territorial 3-ton animal whose mouth opens to almost 180 degrees, that wide-open yawn you've seen in wildlife clips. The one that looks so relaxed is not a tired hippo. It's the clearest threat it owns. It's showing the lower canines, teeth that never stop growing and can pass 30 centimeters, and it's telling everything nearby to back off. So if a hippo ever yawns in your direction, the correct response is to already be somewhere else. Not that being somewhere else is easy, because you cannot outrun it. This is where the numbers stop being cute. A hippo is actually too dense to swim. It can't float. It gets around by walking and pushing off the riverbed, moving underwater like an astronaut on the moon, which is why it can vanish so completely in a river only a couple of meters deep. But bring it onto land, give it a straight line, and a hippo can hit around 30 kilometers an hour in a short burst. That's faster than any human who has ever lived. A creature the size of a small car that we insist on finding adorable can run a sprinting adult down from behind. And the jaw that closes at the end of that sprint does so at roughly 1/800 psi, enough to fold a canoe in half. Then there's the thing coming out of its skin. Hippos look like they sweat blood. A thick, reddish, oily fluid beads up across the back and face until the animal appears to be bleeding from every pore at once. It isn't. That red substance is one of the strangest bits of chemistry in the animal world. It works as a sunscreen and a powerful antibiotic at the same time. And it turns out that's not decoration. Male hippos spend much of their lives carrying enormous open wounds from fighting one another, sitting for hours in warm water full of waste and bacteria, and somehow not falling ill. The blood-colored sweat is what keeps those gashes clean. And then there's the detail that the grass-eater reputation simply does not survive. In 2015, a researcher named Ligia Dorward documented hippos under heavy drought stress, doing something a plant eater is not supposed to be capable of at all, feeding on the remains of impala and on the remains of other hippos. When the environment turned hard enough, the I only eat plants instinct bent. One grim consequence was anthrax moving through the population from what they'd been feeding on. A vegetarian right up until it decides otherwise. That's the first name on this list. A grass eater. It does not get less strange from here. The Cape buffalo. Professional hunters in southern Africa have a nickname for the next animal, and they did not pick it to sell safari packages. They call it the Black Death. Some of them call it the Widowmaker. These are people who spend their working lives around lions and leopards, and the animal that keeps them up at night is a member of the cattle family that grazes all day. The African buffalo, Syncerus kaffir, runs up to 900 kilograms and moves in large herds. On paper, it's a big, bad-tempered cow. In practice, it carries one of the most disturbing habits on the continent, and it isn't about size or strength. It's about the grudge. Wound a buffalo and watch it disappear into the brush, and an ordinary animal would just keep running. This one doesn't, it loops. It swings wide in a long circle, crosses back over its own trail, and tucks itself in behind cover a few meters off the same path it just walked down. The path the hunter is now following to track it. Then it holds still and waits for that person to pass by, eyes down on the trail, and comes at them from the blind side. It has, in the most literal sense, set an ambush for the specific individual who hurt it. Very few animals on Earth plan a counterattack. This one treats it as routine, and that behavior isn't just temper. Long-running studies of buffalo, including years of observation by researchers like John Milosevsky, point to a genuinely punishing memory. A herd can lock onto the specific face or the specific scent of whatever hurt one of its own, and carry that for years. Then it acts on it. Buffalo have been recorded seeking out lion dens and trampling through them to reach the cubs, removing the threat while it's still small enough to remove. Think about that. A grass eater walking into a predator's home on purpose to deal with a problem years before that problem grows teeth. That's not panic. That's planning. The reason any of this works is bolted across the top of the animal's skull. In older males, the base of the horns fuses into one continuous slab of bone called the boss. It's a natural helmet, and it is unbelievably dense. Dense enough that a heavy rifle round fired straight into the front of the head can flatten against it and glance off. Hunters have watched a shot that should have ended the whole encounter simply skip away, and then had to deal with a buffalo that was now wide awake and deeply unimpressed, and it rarely comes alone. A buffalo in trouble calls out and the herd answers. Up to 500 of them can wheel around and move as a single wall of horns, a living phalanx, charging at 50 kilometers an hour to pull one calf back out from a pride of lions. And the lions, more often than not, let the calf go. Standing in front of that math is simply not worth it. 16 hours a day, this thing eats grass. The rest of the time, it holds one of the longest memories in the bush, and it settles its scores. The shoebill. Everything so far has come charging at you. The next one just stands there. That's the unsettling part. In the papyrus swamps of Central and Eastern Africa lives a bird that can hold itself perfectly still for 3 to 4 hours at a stretch. Not mostly still. No blink, no shift of weight, no drift. It fixes on the surface of the water and becomes a statue, and it can wait out almost anything living below it. This is the shoebill, Balaniceps rex, and upright it stands about 1.5 meters, roughly the height of a grown adult, which means it tends to be looking straight at you, at eye level, with a face that appears to have been designed by someone who had a bird described to them once and had to guess the rest. Start with the head, since that's the part that follows you home. The bill is around 24 centimeters long, shaped like a wooden clog, with edges sharp enough to do real work and a hard hook curling off the end. It does not peck. When the moment arrives, the shoebill lets the entire weight of its body drop forward, bill open, and brings that thing straight down like a hydraulic trap, pinning and taking apart prey a bird that size has no business handling. It goes after lungfish as long as your forearm, water snakes, and young crocodiles. Young crocodiles. This is a bird whose regular menu includes the animal that everything else in the swamp is trying to avoid. Then there's the sound, which is somehow harder to sit with than the silence. Shoebills don't sing. To reach one another across the reeds, they clatter, snapping the two halves of that hollow bill together in a fast, hard rattle. In the midst of a swamp at first light, the effect is nothing like a bird. The comparison people keep reaching for is a heavy machine gun going off across the water. A sound like that, coming out of a statue you hadn't realized was alive, does something permanent to your sense of the place. And now the turn nobody sees coming. This creature, which looks purpose-built to bring your afternoon to a quiet close, has almost no record of going after people at all. None of the dread it generates is actually pointed at us. Field researchers approaching a nesting shoebill have run into something that looks a lot like manners. Lower your head slowly toward the bird, a kind of bow, and the shoebill will often bow right back. A slow, deliberate dip of that enormous head before it lets you come any nearer. The most menacing-looking bird on the continent will trade you a polite greeting. Hold on to that image, because the nest takes it apart completely. A shoebill usually lays 2 eggs, but the second one isn't really a sibling. It's a backup, insurance in case the first doesn't make it. When both hatch, the older, stronger chick turns on the smaller one, pushing it away from every scrap of food and water, and wearing it down until the younger one is gone, and the mother stands over the whole thing without stepping in. At the end, she carries water in that huge bill and offers it, only to the one that stayed. The same bird that greets a scientist with a courteous bow runs its own nest with no softness in it whatsoever. It hunts by falling. 1.5 meters of bird, letting every bit of that weight collapse bill first into the water. Whatever was down there almost never gets a second try. The puff adder. The snake behind more lives lost in Africa than the black mamba, the cobra, and the boomslang put together is also, by a wide margin, the laziest snake on the continent. It doesn't chase. It doesn't rear up and put on a show. It is fat, slow, and so unbothered that its entire strategy comes down to a single decision. It will not move. That's the puff adder, Bitus arietans. A thick, heavy-bodied snake, beautifully patterned in browns and golds, spread out across the dirt of a trail like something you'd step over without a second thought. And that's the whole problem. You would step over it because you would never see it. Nearly every other snake in the bush follows the same rule. Feel the vibration of footsteps coming and leave. The puff adder has so much confidence in its own camouflage that it does the opposite. It stays exactly where it is. It lets a person walk up, lets a boot come down 1 centimeter from its head, and only when weight actually lands does it react. By then, the two of you are already far too close, and here's the layer most people never hear about. It isn't just hidden to the eye. Researchers found that the puff adder can go quiet on the one sense that should give it away: smell. It effectively stops releasing scent into the air. Trained tracking dogs, which can find almost anything, have been recorded walking straight past a puff adder without registering it. Lions, jackals, and the same. The animal becomes invisible by sight, by sound, and by scent all at once, lying in plain view on the ground. There may be no better example on Earth of a thing that is right there and completely undetectable at the same time. Now the part that undoes the slow and lazy picture entirely. For an animal that can barely be bothered to crawl across a path, the puff adder holds one of the fastest strikes ever measured in a snake. The whole motion, out and back, takes a little over 1/4 second. That is faster than a human reflex. By the time your nervous system has registered that something moved, it's already over and the snake is coiled back exactly where it was, as if nothing happened. What it delivers in that 1/4 second is a piece of machinery worth understanding. The puff adder's fangs are enormous hollow needles, so long they have to fold back flat against the roof of the mouth, like the blade of a pocket knife, just to fit. When it strikes, the jaw swings them forward to nearly 90 degrees and drives them deep, usually into the lower leg of whoever just stepped wrong, pumping in a cytotoxic venom, the kind that goes to work on living tissue, breaking it down from the inside around the wound. And because this snake lives absolutely everywhere, grassland, farmland, the edges of villages, not tucked away in some remote corner. The numbers it produces are staggering. It's estimated to be responsible for around 32,000 lives lost across Africa every year, and tens of thousands more cases where the tissue damage is severe enough that the limb can't be saved. Not the mamba, not the cobra, the fat, slow one that simply refused to get out of the way. The six-eyed sand spider. Watch one for 2 seconds and it's gone. That's not an exaggeration. Drop the six-eyed sand spider, Hexophthalma hani, onto dry sand and start a timer. And inside 2 seconds it has shuffled its legs, thrown sand over its own back, and buried its entire body until it is 100% invisible. No hole, no mound, no sign anyone was ever there. Just desert. It lives across the arid stretches of southern Africa, and it has built its whole existence around not being found. The disappearing act works because of the spider's own body. Under a microscope, it's covered in thousands of tiny bristles, but not ordinary ones. These hairs evolved with curved, flattened shapes for one specific job: grabbing and holding grains of sand. The sand doesn't just cover the spider. It locks on, bonds to the body like a fitted coat, so the camouflage isn't a dusting on top. It's welded on. The animal wears the desert, and it is patient in a way that's genuinely hard to picture. This spider can stay buried and completely motionless for up to a year. No water, no food, nothing. Just waiting under the surface for the faint tremor of something walking past. It can live up to 15 years doing this. It builds no web. It simply becomes part of the ground and waits for the ground to be stepped on. Here's the paradox at the center of it. Bite for bite, this shy, buried, harmless-seeming animal carries what is arguably the most destructive, tissue-damaging venom of any spider on the planet, driven by an enzyme called sphingomyelinase D. In the detail the headlines almost never mention, there is no proven anti-venom anywhere in the world that reliably works against a serious dose of it. In the rare serious cases, the venom sets off a failure of the blood's ability to clot. Internal bleeding on one side, the tissue around the bite breaking down on the other. So you'd expect an animal like that to be aggressive. It's the exact opposite. The six-eyed sand spider is almost comically timid. Feel any real vibration and it doesn't attack. It flees or it buries deeper. The only realistic way to be bitten is to physically press down on it, to sit on it or lie down on top of it without knowing it was there, which is its own kind of unsettling. One of the most severe venoms on Earth, riding around inside one of the shyest animals in the desert, asking nothing of the world except that you never lie down in the wrong patch of sand. The spitting scorpion. Every safety rule you've ever heard about scorpions comes down to the same idea. Look down, watch where you put your hands and feet, and don't let it get close. The next animal read that rule book and decided to attack from range instead. Meet the South African spitting scorpion, Parabuthus transvalicus. When it feels threatened, it doesn't wait for you to reach it, and it doesn't just jab at the ground. It curves that heavy tail forward and fires venom into the air as a fine spray, reaching as far as a full meter. And it isn't spraying blindly. It aims at the glint of light off your eyes, targeting the face. Because a spray to the eyes buys it exactly what it wants: instant blindness and searing pain, and a threat that suddenly has much bigger problems than a small scorpion. There's an old piece of folk wisdom about telling scorpions apart. Thin claws and a fat tail means trouble. Thick claws and a thin tail means it's basically harmless. It's a decent rule of thumb, and this animal breaks it in half. The Parabuthus is a bruiser. Big, heavy claws, a solid body, the whole look of a scorpion you could safely ignore. And it also carries one of the heavier toxins in the scorpion world in that tail. It's the exception the rule warns you about, wearing a costume that says, "Don't worry about me." The delivery system is worth a close look, because spitting undersells it. The stinger at the tip of the tail, the telson, sits inside a cluster of muscles strong enough and around pores shaped precisely enough that the animal doesn't dribble venom the way you'd expect. It pressurizes it and atomizes it, turning the toxin into an aerosol mist, Functionally, it's a perfume bottle loaded with something you very much do not want on your skin. At up to 15 centimeters long, a single spray can throw out as much as 14 milligrams of neurotoxin. And what that toxin does to a nervous system is one of the stranger entries on this whole list. It sets off a condition where the body's sense of touch turns against itself, a state in which even a feather brushing the skin registers as a burn. The signal system doesn't shut down. It goes haywire and turns ordinary contact into pain, but the detail that pushes it from dangerous into genuinely clever is how it manages its own supply. Making a full-strength, protein-heavy venom costs the scorpion a lot of energy, so it doesn't waste it. It carries 2 shots. The first is a clear pre-venom, mostly salt, cheap to produce, enough to hurt and to warn, and often that's all it needs to spend. But if the threat doesn't take the hint and keeps coming, it opens a second valve and switches to the milky, opaque venom, loaded with the heavy proteins, the one that reaches the lungs. It is, in effect, an animal that fires a warning round first and only commits the real ammunition when it decides you've earned it. 3 animals, all in plain sight, none of them where you're looking, which is a good moment to talk about the ones you'd never even think to look for. The ones small enough to arrive in the air or in a mouthful of clean water. The tsetse fly. There's an insect in Africa that can reach into a brain and turn the clock around backwards. Day becomes night. Night becomes day. The person stops sleeping when they should and can't stay awake when they need to, drifting further out of step with the world until they're barely reachable at all. The insect that does this is about the size of a common housefly. That's the tsetse fly, Glossina, and it makes its living the hard way. It doesn't sip, it saws. It cuts into the skin of everything from cattle to lions to people and drinks blood directly. On its own, that would just be unpleasant. The problem is what rides along in the bite. The fly injects a parasite called Trypanosoma brucei, the cause of what's known as sleeping sickness, and that parasite does something very few things in nature can. It crosses the barrier that's supposed to seal the brain off from the rest of the body, gets inside, and takes the internal clock apart. The exhaustion, the confusion, the reversal of day and night. That's the parasite rewriting the schedule from within and without treatment. The person on the other end of it doesn't recover. Now here's the turn, and it's a big one. This same fly, responsible for so much rural hardship across the continent's history, is quietly regarded by some scientists as the greatest game warden Africa ever had. Wherever the tsetse belt ran, the empires of the colonial era couldn't get a foothold. Their cattle couldn't survive it. They couldn't clear the land or settle it or farm it. And so, entirely by accident, that single insect fenced off thousands upon thousands of square kilometers of savanna and kept them wild, protecting more of Africa's great herds than any park ranger ever has. Then there's how it reproduces, which reads like something borrowed from a much larger animal. The tsetse fly does not lay a cloud of eggs in stagnant water like other flies. It grows a single larva at a time inside its own body, nourishing it with a kind of secretion, a fly's version of milk, until the larva is expelled fully formed and nearly the size of the adult that produced it. An insect raising one live young at a time and feeding it internally. Almost nothing else in the insect world works this way, and the fly explains one of the oldest mysteries on the plains. Why does the zebra wear stripes? For a long time, nobody could say for sure. Then researchers pointed the finger straight at the tsetse. The black and white pattern scrambles the fly's ability to read polarized light, the system it uses to figure out where a surface is and where to land. Against the stripes, it can't lock on. The zebra, in other words, is wearing a piece of optical camouflage tuned to one specific insect. The whole coat is an answer to a fly. The guinea worm, the most dangerous animal in this entire list, has no teeth, doesn't chase anyone, and never has to. You invite it in yourself. You take a drink of clear, clean-looking water, no smell, nothing floating in it, nothing to warn you, and somewhere in that mouthful is something microscopic. And then you go on living your normal life for about a year, with no idea that you've become the incubator for one of the strangest animals on Earth. This is the guinea worm, Dracunculus medinensis. What you actually swallowed was a tiny water flea carrying the worm's young. Your stomach acid handles the flea and never touches the passenger. The worm slips through the wall of the gut, and then it disappears into the body and simply grows, quietly, invisibly, drawing no reaction from the immune system at all, threading itself through the muscle of the leg. Over 10 to 14 months, the female stretches out to somewhere between 80 centimeters and a full meter long, coiled inside a person who has felt nothing. Then it's ready, and this is where it takes control. When the worm needs to release its young, it produces an acid under the skin that burns like a live flame. The pain is unbearable, and it's engineered to be, because the one thing that dulls it is cold water. So the person does the instinctive thing and hurries to the nearest river or pond to plunge the leg in for relief. And that is precisely what the worm was steering toward. The instant the skin hits water, the worm ruptures and releases a cloud of its young into the pond, restocking the water for the next person to drink. A creature with no real brain has just used a highly intelligent human being as a taxi and paid the fare in pain. And here's the part that sounds like it can't be true in the 21st century. There is no clever pill, no simple surgery. The only cure is the same one people used 3,000 years ago. You find the end of the worm where it breaks the skin, wrap it around a small stick, and turn the stick, pulling the worm out about 1 centimeter a day. It can take weeks, and you cannot rush it, because if you pull too hard and the worm snaps off inside the leg, it releases toxins that can lead to severe complications and cost the limb entirely. So the world's most modern medicine, faced with this animal, still comes down to a patient hand and a matchstick. There's a genuinely hopeful chapter here. Humanity has nearly wiped it out, from around 3.5 million cases in the 1980s, down to barely more than a dozen in recent years. But the worm answered. As extinction closed in, studies from around 2021 found it had started turning up in something new, packs of village dogs and in baboons. It found a backup host. It refuses to let go of the continent, the hairy frog. Most animals, when cornered, run, bite, or freeze. This one breaks its own bones on purpose. It's a small amphibian from Central Africa, unremarkable to look at, sometimes called the hairy frog and sometimes the horror frog, Trichobatrachus robustus. Grab one, corner it, give it no way out, and it does something no other land animal on the planet treats as a standard defense. It tenses the muscles in its hind feet hard enough to snap the small bones in its toes, and drives those broken points out through its own skin, turning the exposed bone into a set of rough, improvised claws where a second ago there was just a foot. Sit with that for a moment, because it really is that strange. To avoid ending up as someone's meal, the frog chooses to put itself through something no other terrestrial animal uses as a routine tool. The weapons aren't stored and waiting. It manufactures them on the spot out of its own skeleton. The mechanics are as odd as the idea. Inside the foot, small nodes of bone sit anchored in the tendons, held in place by a little cartilage. Under enough stress, the tendon yanks the bony tip loose, and it punches through the membrane and out through the skin as a temporary claw. And there's a catch the frog has to live with. It has no muscle to pull the claw back in. So once the fight is over, it doesn't get to simply reset. The biologist David Blackburn, who documented this, described how the frog has to carry the injury for weeks, the pain, the open foot, while the cartilage slowly regrows and the bone gradually slides back down into the tendon on its own, and the skin closes over it again, and the claws aren't even for hunting. The frog eats slugs, snails, centipedes, nothing that requires drawing bone. The claws exist for one purpose only, the face and belly of whatever is trying to make a meal of it. It is, as far as anyone has found, the only backboned animal on Earth that deliberately turns its own skeleton into a weapon and then has to wait to heal from the decision. The driver ants. Nothing on this list can be stopped with force. This one can't be stopped at all. These are the driver ants, or Siafu duralis. And the reason they belong in a video about the most fearsome animals in Africa isn't any single ant. It's that there's no such thing as a single ant. They travel as a colony that can run to 50 million individuals moving together, and they move as one thing, a broad, living front that pours across the forest floor like spilled oil that has decided where it wants to go. Knock down thousands of them and it changes nothing, because millions more simply flow over the top and keep coming. They tear through the ground for weeks at a stretch, and they do not reverse. Here's the paradox running underneath it. The most coordinated, most tactically ruthless army in African biology is made up almost entirely of workers and soldiers that cannot see a thing. The females that do the fighting are effectively blind, their eyes sealed shut for life. On a planet where nearly everything is steered by light and vision, this whole war machine navigates in total darkness, by scent alone, feeling its way forward on chemical trails, driven by nothing but the reach of its own jaws. And those jaws are the reason the ant matters long after it's gone. The soldier's mandibles are built to bite down and lock, and they hold their grip even if the ant is torn away from its own body. Local Maasai communities turned that into field medicine centuries ago. To close a deep cut, they take an angry soldier ant, hold it to the wound so it clamps the edges of the skin together, and then pull the body clean off. The head stays behind, jaws locked, holding the wound shut like a living surgical staple. A row of them, and you have stitches that were alive a minute ago. There's one more thing they do that shouldn't be possible without a single one of them in charge. Hit a gap in the ground, a dip, a stream, a break in the path, and the column doesn't stop and it doesn't detour. The ants closest to the edge grab hold of one another, legs and bodies interlocking, and build a bridge out of their own bodies, holding a shape stable enough for the rest of the 50 million to march straight across the top. No leader gives the order, no engineer draws the plan. Each ant follows a simple rule about weight and contact. And out of millions of those tiny rules, a structurally sound bridge just appears and dissolves again once the crossing is done. You can't reason with that, and you can't outmuscle it. Which, oddly, makes it the perfect place to turn to the animals that don't rely on numbers at all, the ones that bring intelligence, planning, and something close to organized crime to the business of the hunt. The spotted hyena. For about a century, the hyena has been handed the same role in every story. The snickering coward, the trash eater slinking around the edges while the noble lion does the real work. Almost everything in that picture is backwards. Start with the food, because that's where the myth falls apart fastest. In the real ecology of the savannah, the spotted hyena, Crocuta crocuta, brings down around 95% of what it eats through its own effort. It is a genuine hunter and a relentless one. The lion, meanwhile, is very often the freeloader in this relationship. Strolling up to a fresh kill, the hyenas ran down and simply taking it, using its size to rob the animal that did the work. The scavenger of the fairy tales is usually the one being robbed. And this is not a loose crowd of animals. A hyena clan is a strict matriarchy, run entirely by females, organized top to bottom with a precision that surprised the scientists who first mapped it. Just how sharp that organization is came out of an experiment at Duke University, where researchers set hyenas and chimpanzees the same cooperative puzzle. Pairs of animals had to pull 2 ropes at the same time to get a reward. The chimps, our brilliant close relatives, struggled and squabbled. The hyenas quietly solved it, coordinating in near silence, reading one another with a glance, working out who does what without a sound. On a test of social problem solving, they outperformed the primates. Then there's what the body can do, which is where it stops being charming. A hyena's bite comes in around 1100 psi, roughly double the force of a large domestic dog, enough to crush straight through bone that other predators leave behind. And what happens to that bone afterward is genuinely strange. Hyena stomach acid runs to a pH of about 1.2, corrosive enough to dissolve hide, hoof, and skull. So much bone goes in and gets broken down that the droppings come out white, chalky like crumbled plaster. The calcium of everything it has eaten, given back to the ground. The biology gets stranger still. Female spotted hyenas are flooded with androgens, the hormones we associate with males, at such high levels that they develop external anatomy shaped almost exactly like a male's. They urinate through it, court through it, and give birth through it, at real cost to themselves. It's one of the most extreme reproductive setups in any mammal, and it starts the animal's life on a hard edge from the very first minutes. Because those first minutes can be the most dangerous of a hyena's whole life, and the threat is its own sibling. Cubs are frequently born ready to fight, and in the den the stronger newborn will turn on the other and force it out of contention, securing for itself the one thing worth having in a matriarchy, the open slot near the top, the path to becoming the next ranking female. Before it has even seen daylight, it has already settled who leads: the African wild dog. Here's a number that should end the argument about which predator you'd least want on your trail. A lion, king of everything, succeeds in roughly 1 in 4 or 5 of its hunts, somewhere around 20 to 25%. The African wild dog succeeds in about 85. If this animal's pack decides on you, the math is simply not on your side. The African wild dog, Lycaon pictus, also called the painted dog for the mottled patchwork of color that's unique to each individual, like a fingerprint, is built end to end for the long chase. Evolution erased the 5th toe from its feet to make the leg lighter and cleaner for running, so the pack can hold 60 kilometers an hour in relay, one dog pressing the prey while another rests, trading off until the animal simply has nothing left. And those enormous rounded ears aren't only for hearing. They're radiators threaded with blood vessels. As the pack runs flat out under the sun, air moving over the ears cools the blood before it reaches the brain. So the dog can keep going long after most animals would have to stop and cool down. The way this pack takes its food is hard to watch, and it's worth being honest that the end for the prey is quick to arrive but not gentle. The dogs don't have the jaw to choke a large animal down first the way a lion does, so the hunt and the feeding blur into the same moment, often while the chase is still winding down. It's efficient in a way that unsettles people, and that's exactly why the next fact lands so oddly. Because turn away from the prey and look inside the pack, and you find one of the most cooperative, least violent societies in the animal kingdom. There are no dictators. The dogs don't fight over food. Hunters that have eaten their fill run all the way back to the den and bring the meal up again to share it, mouth to mouth, with the pups, the sick, the elderly, and the pregnant females who couldn't join the chase. The same animals capable of that kind of hunt run a home life built almost entirely on generosity. They even vote. In 2017, biologists confirmed something that sounds made up. Before a hunt, the pack holds a kind of meeting, and the ballots are sneezes. A dog sneezes to signal it's ready to go. Others sneeze back, and the pack doesn't move until enough sneezes pile up to cross a threshold, a rough quorum. If a high-ranking dog starts it, only a few sneezes are needed. If it's a lower-ranking dog, the pack needs a lot more convincing. They are quite literally taking account of who's in before they commit to the day. The chacma baboon. The last animal in this stretch isn't the strongest and doesn't have the best weapons. It just thinks too much and points that thinking in an ugly direction. The chacma baboon, Papio ursinus, is a primate most people file next to the goofy monkeys at the zoo, a fruit eater, basically harmless, a little comic. On the ground in southern Africa, it runs something much closer to organized crime. Troops of up to 150 individuals move together with total visual coordination, and they organize raids, sweeping into an area, even into houses, working out how to open doors, surrounding a target as a unit. It isn't desperation, and it isn't hunger on an empty savanna. It's a group that has learned it can take what it wants by force of numbers, and does. The hardware backs it up. Look inside the mouth of a big male and you'll find canines over 5 centimeters long. Longer, in fact, than a lion's. And here's the tell. Those enormous blades aren't primarily for food. Evolution shaped them as instruments of display and politics, weapons for settling rank inside the troop, for threatening and dueling other baboons. The biggest teeth on the animal exist mostly so it can dominate its own kind. Which brings us to the most disturbing research on this whole list. The neurobiologist Robert Sapolsky spent more than 20 years watching these troops, and what he documented reads less like wildlife and more like a study of cruelty. Dominant males, he found, will deliberately wear down the weaker members of their own group, not for food, not for mating, not for any physical need, but on calm, uneventful days, singling out the small and the vulnerable and pushing them into a state of chronic stress. The effect is real and measurable. The constant fear suppresses the immune systems of the bullied animals and shortens their lives. The strong keep the weak afraid on purpose, because a frightened underling is an obedient one, and there's a piece of folklore, reported often enough by observers to have weight behind it. Baboons taking puppies and young dogs, raising them rough and fearful within the troop, so that as adults those dogs will sound the alarm and guard the group. A primate that keeps another animal, deliberately shaped by stress, as a security system. It's a hard note to sit on, so here's the small mercy in it. Everything the baboon does to hold power, it does with a brain running on the same wiring as ours, which is a fitting place to meet the animal that shares even more of that wiring and uses it for something worse. The chimpanzee. Our closest relative in the animal world does not hand our innocence back to us. It hands back the other thing. The chimpanzee, pan troglodytes, shares almost all of our DNA, and people like to read warmth into that. The playful Tea Party chimp of old advertisements. What the research actually found, once people watched long enough, is that chimps share the parts of us we'd rather not claim. They are the only other land animal that wages something you can only call war, with premeditation, patience, and cold political logic behind it. It starts with silence. Groups of males form border patrols and go quiet, actively suppressing the noises chimps normally can't help making, and slip along the edges of their territory into a neighbor's ground. If they come across a lone chimp from the rival group, the patrol overwhelms it as a unit, focused and coordinated, removing the individual, and over time, working through a rival community until there's nothing left of it. This is not a fight over a single meal. It's a campaign for territory and resources, run the way we run ours. The most famous case is almost unbearable in its length. In what became known as the Gombe War, documented by Dr. Jane Goodall, one community, the Kasekela, systematically went after a breakaway group called the Kahama, week after week, one male at a time, until across roughly 4 years the entire rival group was gone and its territory absorbed. 4 years? That's not a burst of temper. That's a sustained project, and they build tools to do harm, which for a long time we thought was ours alone. In the savannah at Fongoli, researchers watched chimps snap branches, strip the leaves, and sharpen the tip with their front teeth, making a crude wooden spear, and then jab those spears repeatedly into hollows in tree trunks to reach the small primates sleeping inside. They didn't stumble into a weapon. They designed one. The one mercy is that they can't quite hide their strength behind all that cleverness. A chimpanzee is somewhere around 1 1/3 to 1.5 times stronger, pound for pound, than a trained human athlete, because our muscles are wired for fine control and endurance, and theirs are wired for raw, explosive force. It's enough torque to tear apart smaller animals with a single pull. The same hands that carve a spear can do that. That combination, the planning of a strategist and the body of something far stronger than us, is the part that stays with you. The honey badger. After all that intelligence, here's the opposite argument for how to be unstoppable. Don't be smart. Don't be big. Just refuse as completely and permanently to acknowledge that you can lose. The honey badger. Mellivera capensis stands about 30 centimeters at the shoulder and looks like someone crossed a skunk with a slightly disappointed small dog. It also holds an official Guinness World Records title as the most fearless creature on the planet, and it earned it the hard way. Threatened by a lion or a hyena, an animal 10 times its size, the honey badger has no self-preservation instinct to fall back on. It attacks, and it attacks low, running underneath the bigger animal and going straight for the most sensitive target it can reach, which is often enough to send a predator many times its weight limping off in genuine trouble. Part of why it survives these fights is its skin, which is one of the strangest defensive features going. The hide across its back is thick and hangs loose, barely attached to the muscle underneath. So when a leopard ambushes it and clamps its jaws on the back of the neck to hold it still, the badger has enough slack to twist its whole skeleton around inside its own skin, turn back to face the leopard while still in its grip, and go to work on the predator's eyes. It's a bit like trying to hold a small, furious animal that's wearing a coat 3 sizes too big and can spin around inside it. Then there's the venom, which by all rights should end it. Honey badgers take direct hits to the face from cobras and vipers, the worst the continent offers. And it does drop them. The badger goes down, falls into a deep, still coma-like state on the ground for a couple of hours, looking for all the world like it's finished, and then its metabolism quietly breaks the venom down, and the badger gets up, shakes it off, and goes back to finishing the very snake that put it there. Biologists traced this to a genetic quirk, mutations in its nerve receptors that the snake's neurotoxin simply can't lock onto, like a key that no longer fits the door. And it's clever in a way that becomes a problem in captivity. A famous badger named Stoffel, at a sanctuary in South Africa, repeatedly broke out of enclosures built to hold predators, rolling rocks into balls to climb on, stacking branches into ladders, unlatching gates, apparently just to prove he could. So this is the summary. An animal that shrugs off cobra venom, spins inside its own skin, picks fights with lions, and files paperwork to escape prison in its spare time. Africa's most fearless resident is roughly the size of a house cat and knows it doesn't matter. The black mamba. There's one rule everyone learns about snakes. They're more afraid of you than you are of them, and given the chance, they'll always choose to leave. The next animal is the reason that rule comes with an asterisk. The black mamba, Dendroaspis polylepis, will usually take the exit like any other snake. But push it, corner it, leave it feeling it has no way out, and something changes. It can rear up until a third, sometimes half, of its long body is off the ground, bringing its head level with a grown adult's face, spread a thin hood, and hold that pose while striking again and again in fast succession. It is one of the very few snakes that will stop retreating and commit to the confrontation. Here's a detail that surprises almost everyone. The black mamba isn't black. Its skin runs olive gray, a dusty brown. The name comes from the inside of its mouth, the ink-black lining it shows when it opens wide in a final warning. A flash of darkness a fraction of a second before it commits. What it carries is not the kind of venom that swells and burns and rots a limb. It's a clean neurotoxic cocktail, dendrotoxins, and the horror of it is the quiet. It doesn't attack the tissue. It goes after the wiring. Within minutes, it jams the potassium channels that carry signals between nerves, and the nerves simply stop talking to each other. The message to breathe stops arriving. And because it targets the body's controls and not the brain itself, a person can stay clear-headed and aware while the machinery around them goes still, awake for the part where the lungs quit answering. Without anti-venom, reports have put the window from the bite to that point at anywhere from around 45 minutes down to as little as 20, and the snake can move across the ground at up to 20 kilometers an hour to close the distance. And then, the twist that almost redeems it. A pharmacology team at the CNRS in France went digging through that venom and found a set of compounds they named mambalgins. In lab testing, these turned out to be powerful pain relievers, matching or beating morphine in some measures, but without the addictive grip morphine has on the brain. So there's a strange joke buried in the biology of Africa's most feared snake. Locked inside the fastest, cleanest end on the continent is a molecule that might one day take pain away from the rest of us and let us keep our footing while it does. The Goliath tigerfish. Everything else here rules the land or the air. The last one owns the black water and it hunts upward. The Goliath tigerfish, Hydrocynus goliath, does something almost no freshwater fish attempts. It comes out of the river to hunt. It rockets up from the dark like a silver torpedo, breaks the surface, and takes swallows and small birds straight out of the air as they skim low over the water. A fish intercepting flight. That alone should tell you what kind of animal shares its river. That river is the Congo, the deepest, most violent river system in the world, and the Goliath tigerfish sits near the top of it. Consider what that means. This water is ruled by the Nile crocodile, the prehistoric monster we'll get to soon. And the Goliath tigerfish is the one fish bold enough and equipped enough to hunt in the other direction, running down and taking apart the young crocodiles that dare to swim through its stretch of the river. It flips the whole hierarchy of the water on its head. The equipment is worth a close look. It grows to about 1.5 meters and around 50 kilograms of pure hydraulic muscle, and its mouth holds 32 teeth, each over 2.5 centimeters of exposed enamel, the size you'd expect on a great white shark. And they're arranged with mechanical precision. When the jaw closes, grooves in the upper palate receive the lower teeth, so the whole mouth shuts like a pair of interlocking shears, capable of taking prey apart in a single clean pass. But the part that makes it a nightmare to escape is the sense you can't see. The muddy, lightless Congo doesn't slow it down at all, because it barely hunts by sight. It has a swim bladder linked to a chain of small bones, a Weberian apparatus, that turns its entire body into a giant eardrum. It picks up the low-frequency vibration of something swimming from a long way off, through water, black as ink. It doesn't need to see anything move. It hears it, locates it, and comes up out of the dark already knowing exactly where you are. And speaking of animals that own the dark water, there's one more waiting downstream, older than almost anything on this list, and it may be the strangest of them all. The Nile crocodile, older than almost anything else on this list. Here it is. The Nile crocodile, Crocodilus niloticus, is a design that stopped needing improvements a very long time ago, and its central problem is one it solved with brute physics. Its teeth are cones, built to grip, not to slice, and it has no arms to hold anything down. So when it takes a large animal at the water's edge, it clamps on, pins the prey beneath the surface, and then spins, rolling its entire body over and over at a speed the water shouldn't allow. That rotation, the death roll as it's known, is pure leverage, and it's enough to twist a limb or a whole section clean off. Then, often, the crocodile does something oddly patient with the pieces. It wedges them under submerged roots and leaves them in the dark water for weeks, letting time soften what its cone teeth can't cut, until the meal is easy to swallow. The way it hunts in total darkness is where it stops feeling like an animal and starts feeling like a machine. A crocodile can open that meter-long mouth underwater, take hold of something, and hold it there for long minutes without a single drop reaching its own lungs, because a flap of flesh at the back of the throat seals the airway completely, cutting the mouth off from the windpipe. And its face is studded with thousands of tiny black dots, integumentary sensory organs, that together form a kind of pressure sonar. In absolute blackness, it can feel the ripple of a single drop of water hitting the surface meters away. It doesn't need to see anything. It feels you arrive. All of this drives one of the heaviest bites ever measured, around 5,000 psi, and a quieter, grimmer figure behind it. This animal's near-perfect invisibility in the water is linked to something on the order of 1,000 lives lost across African rivers every year, far outstripping the number connected to sharks worldwide. And then the turn that reframes the whole animal. That same cold machine is one of the most careful, tender parents on Earth. The mother crocodile guards her nest for months, and when the eggs are ready, she uses those bone-crushing jaws to gently crack the shell of a hatchling that hasn't managed it on its own. She rolls her newborns across her tongue to check them, and scoops as many as 20 of them into that enormous mouth at once to carry them safely down to the water. The same mouth, used with the delicacy of a surgeon. There's even a mind in there that we badly underestimated. The researcher Vladimir Dinets documented Nile crocodiles doing something reptiles supposedly can't, using bait. In the nesting season, when birds are hunting for twigs to build with, crocodiles have been seen balancing small sticks across their own snouts and lying still, half sunk, pretending to be floating driftwood. A bird drops in to grab the free building material and finds out that the log was thinking the whole time. The marabou stork somewhere in a European fable, a tall white stork carries a bundle to a family's window, the tidy symbol of a new life arriving. This next animal is that bird's very close biological cousin, and it has taken the family name in a slightly different direction. The marabou stork, Leptoptilos crumenifer, stands in the dried mud at the edge of things, surrounded by flies, up to its bald head in whatever has been left behind. It shares a branch of the family tree with that storybook stork, and everything gentle in the fable curdled on the way to this one. It stands as tall as a person's waist, around 1.5 meters, and when it opens up, its wingspan can reach 3 meters, tip to tip, rivaling the great condors, carried on a heavy wedge of a bill that can pass 30 centimeters. Nearly everything grotesque about it turns out to be a tool. The bald head isn't a curse for the sake of looking ghoulish, it's equipment for the job. The marabou pushes its head deep inside carrion, into the warm interior of what it's eating, and bare skin doesn't trap the mess or the fungus the way feathers would. Sun then falls directly on that bare skin and helps sterilize it, keeping infection at bay. It even cools itself in a way that's hard to describe politely. On the worst days of heat, it directs its own waste, heavy with uric acid, down its bare black legs, where it dries into pale, antiseptic crusts that work as a crude air conditioning and disinfectant at once. In that great fleshy pouch hanging from its neck, it inflates it to throw its weight around, to dominate the vultures at a shared find. Here's the part that earns it a place on this list, rather than just a look of disgust. The marabou's stomach is a genuine disintegration chamber. Its digestive acids are severe enough that it can consume flesh riddled with anthrax, and meat carrying the toxin behind botulism, agents that would be catastrophic in almost any other body, and process them with no ill effect whatsoever. It is in effect a walking incinerator for exactly the kinds of outbreaks that would otherwise sweep across the region. The ugliest bird at the table is the one quietly keeping epidemics from starting. It'll also take the living when the chance appears, snatching lizards fleeing ahead of a brush fire, swallowing an old flamingo whole, legs and all. Without a single bite, the marabou survives by making itself repellent, by being the thing nothing else wants to be near. The last animal on this list does the opposite. It's the most beloved giant on the planet, and it hides the hardest turn of all. The African elephant, we give the elephant every gentle word we have. Wise, gentle, the animal that grieves, that stands over the bones of its dead and turns them over with its trunk, that recognizes old friends across decades. All of that is true, and it makes what follows harder to hold, not easier. The African elephant, Loxodonta africana, has a state that the loving giant reputation never survives, and it has a name, must. It runs on the animal's own chemistry. During this period, glands on the side of the head, between the eye and the ear, swell under enormous internal pressure and leak a thick, strong-smelling fluid down the face. That pressure brings a constant splitting headache, and it arrives alongside a hormonal surge that is difficult to believe until you see the number. Testosterone in a male in must can spike to around 60 times its normal level, a 6,000% rise. It is in effect a chemical storm, and it drops the animal into a trance in which it feels no pain, no fear, and nothing resembling restraint. What a 6-ton animal does in that state has nothing to do with food. A bull in must flips safari vehicles, snaps century-old trees in half, and goes after other animals for no reason a hunter or a herbivore would recognize, expending all of that force purely because the chemistry demands an outlet. Across the continent, elephants are connected to something like 500 lives lost each year, and a good share of that traces back to this one window in the calendar, when the gentlest animal we know stops being reachable. But the piece that truly unsettled the scientists came out of South African parks in the 1990s. Rangers began finding rhinos, an endangered animal, brought down and left in the open. Horns completely untouched, which ruled out poachers entirely. Something was going after them and taking nothing. The answer, when it came, was almost unbearable. The ones responsible were young orphaned males. As calves, they had watched their mothers taken by poachers, and they'd grown up in herds with no older bulls left to steer them, no elders to hold them in line when the hormones hit. So when must came to them early, the way it does in a broken herd, the trauma had nowhere to go. These young males formed loose gangs and turned that untreated damage outward onto the rhinos, out of something that looked a great deal like grief, with no one to teach it what to do. And here is where the story ends, because the fix told everyone what the problem had really been. The parks brought in a handful of large, mature bulls, grown adults, calm, dominant. The older males stepped in, put the adolescents in their place, and held them there. And the young ones stopped. The rhinos were left alone. It turned out the most powerful land animal on Earth was never quite as fearsome as what happens to it when there's no one older left to show it how to carry all that weight.